easiest part. Put your name on there. Ours helpful too. So we've been working with linear equations, right? When we graph them, we would draw lines. So we are still working with linear equations, but this form is a little bit different form. So we were working with the slope-intercept form, y equals, right? Here, the standard form is ax plus by equals c, where a, b, and c are, well, this would be a constant, right, with no variable, but these would be coefficients, so the number in front of x and y. So the first thing they're asking us to do is to convert these standard form equations into slope-intercept form. So we have to remember what slope-intercept form is, right? Y equals mx plus b. So essentially, we're trying to get y by itself on the left. So here, this doesn't look so bad because it's just a y. How would we get y by itself? How would we get rid of this 2x? How would I make it 0? Subtract it, yep. So I'm going to say minus 2x from the left side of my equation. And remember that whatever we do to the left side, we have to do to the right side. I'm going to kind of write it over here, minus 2x, because I'm not really saying 3 minus 2, right? These are not like terms, so I cannot combine them. And then I'm going to draw my big old line. So on the left, I have y equals, that's what I wanted. Now I have two terms here. If I'm trying to write it like this, I want to put my x term first. So I'm going to write minus 2x. And then that 3 is positive, so that is plus 3. Do you see now that it's in the form y equals mx plus b? So now we can easily identify the slope. M is that coefficient, -2, and b, our y-intercept, is that +3. So these directions make us do 3 things: write the equation in slope-intercept form and identify the slope and y-intercept. So here's the equation, here's the slope, here's the y-intercept. All right. So that wasn't so bad, but this next one's gonna be a little bit trickier because right away I see, well, I can't just get rid of this because I have a 5y and I want to know what 1y is. So here's where it gets a little tricky. Are you ready? First of all, I can't do anything to this 5y until I get rid of this 4x. So I'm gonna do it the same way and subtract it from both sides. Minus 4x from the right. So that goes away, it's 0. Now I'm not left with y yet. I have 5y is equal to, and here's where I'm going to put my x term, -4x minus 30. Now how do I figure out what 1y is? What's being done to y? When I have a number next to a letter, that means they're being multiplied. So to undo multiplication, I have to do what? Divide. Good. So I'm going to divide everything on the left by 5 and everything on the right, which means I'm dividing this term and this term by 5. So I could have written it like -4x minus 30, all divided by 5 like this. But what this means is I have to divide this term by 5 and this term by 5. So I'm kind of separating it out just to help us with our next step. So now I have 1y. That's what I wanted. Now I have this coefficient. I have -4 divided by 5. And it's a slope, so I can leave it like that, right? And it's being multiplied by x. And then I have to say -30 divided by 5, which is -6. So a lot of these are going to take that one extra step of dividing by the coefficient of y. But from here, we can easily figure out our slope and our y-intercept, right? Our slope is m, so -4/5. And b is -6. Our y-intercept is -6. Does that make sense? It's a little bit trickier for sure than just number 1. So every time we're going to solve for y. You guys are used to solving for things, but not used to having 2 variables in your equation, right? When you're solving for them. So it is a bit different. So let's look at number 3. First, I gotta get this x on this other side because I want my mx to be over here. So I have to subtract it. Now I have -3y is equal to -x plus 12. And just like I did over here, I have to divide by the coefficient to figure out what 1y is. So if I divide this by -3, I have to divide both parts, both terms on the right by -3. So this leaves me with 1y, which is just y. That's what we wanted. Now here's a little bit tricky. What is in the numerator? What's the coefficient right here? 1, right? Negative divided by a negative is actually going to be positive. So now I have 1/3, right? 1 divided by 3 times x. Do you see where I'm getting the new coefficient? Slopes are nice. You can leave them as fractions, right? And then 12 divided by -3 is -4. Now that we have it in slope-intercept form, we can easily write down their slope and our y-intercept, right? Y equals mx plus b here, the whole with the sign included. All right, so 4 starts out the same. Remember, we can always refer back to an example to see what we would do next. We're going to subtract x from both sides to move it to the right. So now, don't forget this sign in front of y, though. It's not just y, it's -y is equal to -x minus 8. So if -y is equal to that, we could either multiply everything by -1, or we could divide everything by -1. And what that does is it essentially takes the opposite. So if we take the opposite of everything, we have y is equal to the opposite of -x is x. The opposite of -8 is +8. Does that make sense? You could think of it as -1 times -1 is +1y. -1 times -x is positive xy. -1 times -8 is +8. Or you could think that you're taking the opposite of everything. As long as you're doing the same thing to both sides, it keeps it equal, right? All right, this is a tiny bit tricky. What's the slope here? What's m? What's the coefficient of x? It's that implied 1. Very good. And our y-intercept is that 8. That making sense? All right, we're still gonna do the same thing. I'm looking up at number 2 because I notice we've got to get rid of the 4x again, right? So we're gonna do it the same way we did the first time and subtract 4x from both sides. So really we have negative y equals negative 4x. You could write plus 0 if that helps you remember that there's a b there. And we want the opposite of that because we want to know what positive y is. So y is equal to 4x. Our slope is 4. Our y-intercept is what? This is like our direct variation equations or our proportional relationships. They always started at the origin, right? 0, 0. So our y-intercept is 0. Okay. Yeah, for sure. All right, so what do we have to do first in number 6? We got to move this x term, right? We got to get it to the right side. So we're going to subtract it from both sides. Minus 3x. So now we have negative 2y, right? Don't forget to bring the sign down with it. And we have negative 3x minus 14. So now we have to remember what we did up here, maybe with number 2. We divided by the coefficient, all the terms. So we divided this by the coefficient, which is negative 2. And if we are dividing the left side by negative 2, everything on the right has to be divided by negative 2. So now we have 1y, which is y. That's what we wanted. Negative 3 divided by negative 2. That's going to make it positive, right? But we can just leave it as an improper fraction. That's totally fine. It's being multiplied by x still, right? Don't forget the x. That's probably one of the most common things that we forget, that x. Negative 14 divided by negative 2 is positive 7. So now it's in y equals mx plus b form. We can solve, we can figure out our slope is that 3 over 2. Remember, up 3, right 2. And our y-intercept is 7. We got used to subtracting this from both sides, but when we take the opposite of negative 6x, we're really adding 6x to both sides. Remember, I'm not just showing work for fun. I'm showing work because you should be showing work as well. That leaves me with 4y on the left. I bring down my equal sign. I have that 6x plus 20. Now, if I'm looking up here, I have to divide by the coefficient of y. So I'm dividing everything by 4. So I'm left with y equals. I notice that I could simplify this 6/4 fraction to be the same as this. If I divide them both by 2, I'm at 3/2 x. And then 20 divided by 4 is 5. So this has the same slope, but it starts a little bit lower than number 6. So here our slope is 3/2. And then our y-intercept is 5. All right, So we're going to start out by getting rid of this x from the left. So we have to take the opposite of it from both sides. That leaves us with 5y equals negative x minus 15. We're just bringing these things down. Now I have to divide everything on the left by the coefficient of y and everything on the right by the coefficient of y. This is the part that gets a little bit tricky. This coefficient is really -1. So I'm thinking -1 over 5. I lost my negative sign into my fraction bar, so I'm going to rewrite that up there. And then that's being multiplied by x. Don't forget the x. -15 divided by 5 is -3. So here our slope is -1/5. And our y-intercept is -3. All right, we had 8 examples. Try number 1. I will make sure you're on the right page. We'll probably do a few like that. You try number 1, then we'll go over it. Then we'll try number 2, and then we'll go over it. Then we'll try number 3, we'll go over it, and then you'll try them on your own. All right, did you try this one? This one is a lot like number 1 on here. In fact, is it the same? Nope, it's got a little different number. So you've got 2 subtract 2x from both sides. And after that, you've got it, right? You just need to write your variable term first, that -2x, and then bring down your constant, which is your +2. All right. So try number 2. All right, so here, if we subtract 7x from both sides, we have negative y is equal to negative 7x plus 5. So we need to take the opposite of everything. The opposite of y is y. A negative y is y, rather. The opposite of negative 7x is positive 7x. The opposite of 5 is negative 5. All right, try number 3. Some of you are feeling comfortable, which is good. All right, so we are subtracting 3x from both sides. So we've got negative 2y on the left, and then this negative 3x plus 8. Then we have to divide everything by that negative 2. So this gives us 1y, that's what we wanted. And then we're thinking of this being the coefficient. So it's negative divided by negative becomes positive. So we just have 3 over 2, and don't forget your x. And then 8 divided by negative 2 is negative 4. All right. So we've got pages 2 and 3 for extra practice. Let me know if you're getting stuck.